everybody. Back another fun week. The Agent Boost podcast. A lot going on. I think we might even shoot some back-to-backers for those of you we've been talking to this week, maybe even today or yesterday. Just got off a plane from Devoted's national kickoff.
Just got on a plane, straight from the plane to Chick-fil-A to here.
Yes, exactly. So I haven't had an energy drink in 3 days, so I needed one. Anyways, so yeah, we just wrapped up going out to Boston to visit, Devoted Health. Really impressed, and kind of wanted to give everybody kind of an eyesight or just kind of like a lens on what that event was like and some of our impressions and thoughts from that.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about carriers, and Devoted is one that has been on our radar for a couple of years that we've been early partners with, that we're really looking to grow. And so we kind of wanted to just give our unbiased impressions of them and the event, what we really like about those guys, because I think Dan and I both really appreciated that event. And just to kind of put it in context a little bit, all these on the Medicare side, the carriers usually do rollouts or partner previews, things like that, to get ready for AEP.
Yep.
And June is pretty early. Most of the carriers don't do that before AHIP, but these guys wanted to go first. And especially this year where there's so much going on, it was kind of, I think they get a lot of traction out of it. And it was, I would say, brave of them to go so early, especially considering, all the turmoil going on. And it would have been easy to just say, hey, let's kick this back, a month or 6 weeks or 2 months until we have a clearer picture. So
yeah, but I think from a philosophical perspective, and this is what we liked about Devoted, and we'll keep talking about it, is because we do talk about all the different carriers and kind of like their profile and what makes each carrier slightly different from another. And that, I feel like, is one of our jobs as a distributor, is to not to say, hey, this carrier is good or bad, but here's why, here's our impression and what's different. And they are very like business entrepreneurial focused, and so I can relate to them a lot as a business owner. And just some of the ways that they do things, to your point, they are brave and they're welcome to just come out and do things the way that they want to do it, because they're not beholden to a board right now.
So they're and you can give your initial impressions, but their office is in Waltham, Massachusetts, and their office is in an old historical watch factory, the Waltham watch factory. It's really cool. It's about 10 minutes outside of Boston, and it has a really...
Or 45 in traffic.
Yeah. If you're in a big tour bus, an hour and 45. But they're in an old watch factory, and the company really has more of like a tech startup vibe, feel like a Silicon Valley. We're here in Silicon Slopes in Utah, and it's kind of a refurbed old industrial building, and it does have that like startup tech vibe to it, more so than a traditional healthcare company. That's what I kind of thought.
Yeah, and going back to your initial comments about what being early and going brave, one of the things that was very different about how they did their kickoff is they didn't focus on line item benefits in each of the areas and showing you the 2025 plan benefits, because going back to even conversations I've been having with partners, with agents, with agencies, is getting back into the business of actually value and selling, healthcare. And essentially, like they were showing us more about why they're different and how they're different, how they design things, their technology behind the scenes. And so because they were giving us all more of a look behind the scenes on what makes them different. And a lot of times it's not always just, here's your summary of benefits.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why they're able to go at this time of year and go early.
Well, we can just kind of maybe highlight, chronologically what we did there, and then kind of talk about how they roll it out and what they learned, because they did a good job of, like you said, why Devoted, why you should sell them, not just like, hey, here's a bunch of summary benefits, because nobody knows that yet, and we'll talk about that as well.
Yeah, we will.
But they had us at a dinner reception. It's always interesting. The Devoted room is a little bit different than some of these other carrier rollouts, because there's a few different players. When they first launched, they were strong in Florida and Texas, so a lot of times there's not necessarily the usual suspects that are there.
Right.
But a lot of our other friends in the industry were there as well. So we had a rollout. And one thing that I really noticed about the Park brothers, I think it's cool. They're brothers as well. Ed Park and Todd Park, and they're both very high energy, loving, so well spoken. I mean, you don't get to their level obviously in doing what they're doing, but they were also very accessible. One thing that they kept reiterating over and over again was, hey, we want to make sure you're our valued partners. We want to make sure we know each and every one of you directly. And, I thought it was really cool to go be able to build those relationships and have deep, valuable, intelligent conversations with different makers like that, because, they're both billionaires, or
right.
if not now, paper, they for sure will be, but they were just so. And the other thing I loved is they're like the tech scene, very, very casual, t-shirt, jeans, shoes, not, they weren't trying to flex on anybody. They don't, try to big time at all or anything like that. Just very down to earth, loving, caring, genuine guys.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I appreciated too, is that for so many different carriers and partners, it's almost like they just, people who are very critical to the business are not accessible. They don't make themselves accessible. You know what I mean? And so I do appreciate that, having to have long, just lengthy conversations, and not just surface level where it's like, hey, let's brush that off and pass it to somebody else. No, they were willing to have like any topic. Everything was up for discussion. They were a very open book. And I actually even had a good conversation, which we'll talk about, with their chief legal officer as well, which I really appreciated talking to Mo for a while. Yep. Just the state of the industry right now. And again, I really did value and appreciate the transparency from them, but also their high commitment to partnership. And in this sentiment, in this moment of time that we're in right now, where we're not getting clear direction from a lot of these carriers, it was refreshing to have them kind of double down on their commitment to FMO and partnership.
Yeah, and that was one thing that I took away, is they keep telling the devoted story, and their ethos, their model is treat everybody like family, and we as FMOs, and for anybody out there, I know people from CMS and the government are starting to listen already, right. But we grew up or in the industry by meeting with people face to face and helping people with this complicated business, which is Medicare. And we're solving a very valuable need. And we loved it because it was like, hey, you can make money if you do a good job by taking care of people, right? Yep. And that's essentially Devoted's philosophy. And so there's an alignment of thought that they value brokers. They didn't grow to where they're at now. They're not massive yet, but they didn't grow the way they did by a lot of call center e-broker distribution. They grew by you all, by the agents, feet on the street, belly to belly, doing kitchen table broker enrollments, and that is still the vast majority of all their enrollments. And so there's a kinship there, I feel like, with them as a company and them as a broker, because it's a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, and that was one of my takeaways too, was the number of referrals. I mean, obviously we can talk more about their member satisfaction and how incredibly high it is, and same with like the broker community at large. Those that have gotten appointed with Devoted and actually sold products and experienced the technology, the portal, the process, everything. They really do say the same thing. They want to treat the brokers like family, which I think continues to resonate and has made an impact and a difference, because I can say, like, our brokers that have in a geographical area or found a footprint where they have products, they sell them and they love them. Mm-hmm. And I really think that it has made a difference. And we probably ought to talk too about their company culture and how they've done a great job in, setting themselves apart from maybe some others.
Yeah, let's get to that. Well, let's talk about it. So the next day we went out to the watch factory, and then Todd and Ed both opened, and I think Todd spoke first and, kind of introduced Ed. And one of the things that, a lot of people don't know this, but Todd Park was actually the CTO, the Chief Technology Officer, for a little thing called the United States government during the Obama administration when they rolled out Obamacare. So, I mean, that's the caliber of guys that you're dealing with, and these are the guys that are opening and presenting. And again, what I was so impressed with is they're very warm, they're very welcoming, they're very humble,
right?
And they have a lot of energy. Todd literally was like cheering people on and cheering his team on the whole time. all of the time. And then it proceeded to go. Ed essentially laid out, he kind of took over and laid out the in-depth structure of like what's going on in the industry and gave a very detailed masterclass of kind of the current state of the Medicare industry, of the funding environment. And I took, a lot of really, really good notes, because it's rare that you get to learn directly from somebody that's in it, doing it, at that high level. So I really appreciated that. I don't know if you had any takeaways from Ed's presentation, but.
No, I did. Same thing. And honestly, just the fact that they're so dialed in. And of course, one of my questions, of course, inside conversations was about, really growth too. And, and candidly, one man's opinion, but so take my opinion for what it's worth. I think they're one of the carriers that's positioned extremely well to win this AEP. And it's at this time period in which a lot of other carriers do not have necessarily the appetite to go grow, or maybe the balance sheet in order to grow. They're just not positioned to do it. And so to see that Devoted actually is in a position to, be able to sustain that growth, and they're very in that moment, I think they're going to crush it this AEP. And so I was asking him more about financials and can they sustain it, and the answer is yes. And so that was something that I took away from my conversation with them as well. Yeah. So I think, and the one thing I'll just say too, and add to that, is there are carriers out there who are very much struggling with like the member and the broker experience, where it's not a great experience. And I think that if things happen the way I perceive that they will this AEP, Devoted is going to get a lot of momentum. They're going to explode with growth with all these new expansion states. They're going to get a lot of new membership. And I really think that it's going to be hard to pry that membership away from them.
Yeah, and that's a good point. The other thing that, just kind of going on through their schedule chronologically that I thought was cool is there was a handsome older gentleman there that was sitting there as they were presenting. And I'm like, that guy looks familiar. I couldn't place who it was, but Todd brought up one of their board members and early investors, Howard Schultz, the legendary CEO of Starbucks. Right. And, he came up and talked about, what a great job, kind of poured into the Park brothers as well as to what a great job they're doing. And then, he gave a really great hour-long, almost keynote, very informal, and had some really great information, some stuff that I wanted to post. He talked about Starbucks, and, one of the takeaways was, you're not a company, a transaction company, you're an experience company. And that's the same thing with, that was a big takeaway from him for all of you agents is, and I've been saying our theme of the year to all of our agents this entire year, every sales meeting, is you are not transactional enrollers, you are insurance agents. You're there to build an experience. You're there to build a relationship. You are there to, you want to, and ultimately Todd Park added on and basically said, yeah, we treat all of our members like family. That's our guiding principle is, and even when we were doing face-to-face, that was what we would always do. And what we would always say is, hey, if you were my mother, this is what that was a phrase that we would use all the time. If you were my mother, you were my father.
Because again, you can't use superlatives.
Yeah.
So you would say, yeah.
You couldn't say, I think this is the best option for you. I mean, I'm sure that's still a CMS guideline buried in all the other more pressing ones.
It's on page 2700.
Yeah, exactly.
But yes.
It's rule number 16,000. But yeah, we would say, hey, if you were my mother, or father, this is what I'd put you on. And, I think that's how we grew Books of Business too. And that's Devoted's philosophy. And to kind of transition it over to their culture, that's their guiding principle for all of their employees is, hey, if you just say, hey, what would you do with this person, or how would you treat them if they were your family member? You already know what to do. You already know how to treat them. And so that's a good takeaway for all of you agents out there is, anytime you're having an interaction, what would you do if this was your mother or father or, brother or sister or family member? Would you put them on a plan that's going to be a disadvantage to them to make a couple bucks? Or would you help them to whatever is the best outcome for them, just like you would a family member?
Yeah, and I want to go back to finish just Howard Schultz. So talking about like the format and having, that big surprise and him come out. I was surprised by his presence, and I will also tell you another impression that I have is, and I'll just tell you this, like I think it's refreshing, and I'm okay to say this, like I don't like actively participate and go to church or to meetings every week or attend temple or anything else like that. But I think it's great, and so what's interesting is to see in corporate America. It's almost like, if you watch that show Silicon Valley back in the day when the person got outed as being Christian, Silicon Valley, and they're like, it was almost a little bit refreshing to have the Parks and then even Howard Schultz, be able to talk even about spirituality a little bit.
Yeah, and he's Jewish, and he talked
absolutely.
about that.
Talked about going to Israel, and experience that he shared, which was great.
With the rabbi,
which really left an impression to me, because it just seems like for so many years, you couldn't discuss those kind of things in a corporate environment, which, again, I really appreciate and respect everybody and their religious beliefs and every different creed, race, religion, whatever people want to see and believe. I think that's great, and they should be able to express it. And it was good to see him see that side of it. So that left a good impression as well. So that struck me a little bit. And then also just his caution about, you'll have to jog my memory a little bit, not necessarily complacency, but as you experience growth and success and you actually start doing very well, that kind of becomes your enemy.
He said success and growth oftentimes leads to complacency and decline in companies, and you see that all the time.
All the time in companies, and you see that they were amazing, and then suddenly their product goes to total crap. Or in our industry, we see people who are very much on the up and on the rise, and then suddenly they get kind of fat and happy, so to speak, and suddenly the quality of the experience just.
I thought you were going to say they sold out or something like that, and then the quality goes down.
No, I didn't say that. But no, over time, like, they just get kind of that term, just kind of fat and happy. Yep. You know what I mean? And so he cautioned against that, which I really appreciated. So.
Yeah, it was cool. It was. We love all of our carrier partners and rollouts, and each one has a little different flavor and personality. But it was honestly pretty cool to learn from multiple billionaires at their feet and hang out and spend time and have good quality interactions. Because I think everybody has. We talked about it too, that people pay big money to go to conventions and rollouts and like masterminds and things like that, to be in the presence and learn from guys like that. And so that was my overall biggest value prop, was the quality and the intelligence and entrepreneurship of those guys. It's extremely high caliber.
Yep. No, agreed. And then after that, I think we did lunch, right? And then I think we did this. We had stops. They had set it up, which I actually like too, because let's be honest, if you're in a conference all day or a meeting all day, by the time lunchtime hits, you eat, you're on a full stomach, and it's like 1 PM. I'm ready to doze off. So
I think before that, they brought out their care team, right?
Oh, that's right. That's right.
We could talk about that in the culture, I think.
Yeah, let's do that. So they did. They had out their care team, which essentially the nice difference is, and we'll talk about their Oronoko and everything else in a bit, but the nice thing that brokers need to understand too is that their care team is really cross-trained, right, in every different department.
First call resolution.
Exactly. So meaning, like, when you call in, that care team understands they can help you with commissions, they can help you with licensing questions, they can help you with eligibility lookups, all from, it's not like, hey, let me transfer you around to 3 other people. They're cross-trained, which was really nice.
Yeah, there's they touted a lot of statistics, and a few that they were proud of is their average answer call time right now is 7 seconds.
7 seconds, yeah.
So they're and then they have like a 92% first call resolution, and they have a standard where if they aren't able to resolve it on that call, that they have to follow up within 48 hours to give some sort of update.
Yeah, and to all of our devoted partners, if we're wrong on anything, like, please correct me. So
yeah, correct us in the comments.
Yes, absolutely. So that was impressive, and the other thing that was really struck me too, we'll talk about culture probably there that they've developed. I think that everybody, and I mean, I talked to, kind of peers at other FMOs while I was there. We had a lot of conversations. Definitely there's always time. hanging down at the hotel bar and wherever else, and you're having these side conversations, and every single one of them, they really did. They were impressed by, I guess, like the people culture that they've done a great job building there.
Yeah. So each one of them, they had a panel of their care team. I believe that's what they call them, right? They're essentially when you call in with a customer that to resolve those calls. And I would say, honestly, most of them were middle-aged women, and they all shared stories, and they were very, very kind. Mm-hmm. All of them were super nice. They were from different parts of the country. Actually, they weren't all in.
They flew
mass.
in. Yeah, they worked remote.
And it was interesting that they all were very nice people. Like, you could tell they were legitimately kind. And it reminds me of a quote. I can't remember what book it was I read that said, "How do you get your people, your customer service people, to be so nice?" And the CEO just said, "Well, we hire kind people. We hire nice people." And Devoted has done a good job of doing that. You can tell they have these sweetheart, most of them were ladies, the sweetheart ladies that are kind and love to chat you up. And they were all very proud, and they all were very engaged and bought into the mission. Yep. And their culture was very strong, even virtually. And that was one of the things that we remarked on that was very impressive, was they were all bought into the mission, vision, values of Devoted. And they were all, essentially living and abiding by that principle of what do we do with our customers? Well, we treat them like our family, And so if you're an agent out there and, you're kind of tired of having customer service outsourced to an international BPO and having 30, 45-minute calls and wait times and getting the runaround and just really feeling frustrated, Devoted is doing things right. Now, one of the challenges that I had asked when we went on our tour to, Todd Park was, how do you scale that if you guys grow like you're going to grow? Because it's easier to scale the tech that we'll talk about, but it's harder to scale human infrastructure and be able to, rapidly ramp up that many people. But, they're ruthlessly committed to holding that standard and having that be their DNA.
Yeah. Do we want to go in through, now that we've talked about their care team? Oh, and the other thing I would say too is that it resonated with me a lot, because it's similar-ish, but I always say, like, when we try to hire people, I look for attitude, aptitude, and work ethic. And those are like the things that when I'm trying to hire, like, those are the things that I'm looking for in somebody, more so than where did you work, what's your past experience. I mean, candidly, like, if I need a coder or something, yeah, you would need to be able to have coding experience, but
can't just have a good gumption and good attitude.
But for a lot of these roles like that, and that's what Devoted did at one of our stops too, is go through, here's like our criteria we look at when we're actually hiring an employee, and actually their work experience and like work history was actually nice to have, and it was at the bottom of the list of the things that they were looking for.
Yeah.
So I very much related to that too. But we're in such a niche business. You can't go find people with Medicare experience. They're used to doing like admin staff and supporting agents. It's a thin market out there of people. Yep. So we're always just looking for people who have, again, those attributes, and I very much, that like resonated with me as well.
Yeah, so after that, they took us kind of on a field trip, a tour around the building to some different stops. It reminded me of what we did with our open house, having different stations kind of set up and different staff members and department heads taking the role there. One of the things that we stopped and talked to, Devoted has it's called Devoted Medical, and they have an entire virtual medical team.
Separate entity too.
Separate entity.
Yep.
And you get any Devoted members have access to Devoted Medical as well, that acts like an add-on as a virtual care team. And it goes much further and is much more sophisticated, because, everybody touts like, oh, call into a nurse hotline or a doctor hotline. And you're like, yeah, that's kind of worthless and no one uses it. And you just have it just to like put it on your summary of benefits, but
well, the bigger thing is like those nurse lines, like he was saying, is that usually they just send people to the emergency room because they're worried about getting sued,
Correct.
Right? Because they're worried about legal. Hey, if they call into a helpline and you give bad advice and something, they're concerned, and so they always err on the side of caution and go, okay, just go to the emergency room. And so that's not at all what they're trying to do with Devoted.
Yeah, and Devoted Medical, I would describe it as like a virtual medical system with high caliber, high talented, and they went through some of their doctor profiles, and they have a who's who of really good specialists to actually get care and get expert advice, and they're going to treat you remotely. Like they talked about multiple instances, and one of the other things that really stood out to me that I wrote down in my notes that I love that Todd Park said is every time you tell a story, you make a deposit into the bank of trust. That was a great quote, and Devoted is great at telling stories. So at all these stations, they would tell little, customer service stories or stories, success stories, to build, deposit those deposits in the bank of trust. And they told a story, multiple stories about how they were able to have their Devoted medical team intervene and drive people away from having to go down to the ER or having to even go down to their PCP, right, and get good care faster and more convenient than it would have just been like, oh, hey, yeah, we don't really know what's going on, buddy. Let's CYA and send you down to the ER.
Correct.
So, they're trying to solve these because access to care.
Well, and just so that people and brokers out there maybe listening understand, the intent is still, and we all see how broken healthcare is, and they're really trying to get behind it and fix it and solve it. And so the whole point is, how often is it that someone goes to a PCP and the PCP prescribes something, and then they see a different specialist, and the specialist is maybe in a different health system or network, and they're not synced up, and then that specialist is prescribing something, and those meds they have caused bad interactions one with another, have side effects. Happens actually all the time. And so it's not this coordinated care strategy. And so that's one of the things that they want to do is actually do these assessments with those members that are free, that are just included with the plan, that they're really trying to drive and encourage.
Yeah. And someone had asked a question, do PCPs hate that? Because then you're contracting them and then they're not getting, clients and visit, and most of them are on value-based or risk-based contracts, so they're getting compensated for those.
And Devoted Health does not replace their PCP.
Correct.
It's still, they keep their PCP.
And what they found was that the quality and frequency to those PCPs actually was up a little bit because they were but they were scheduled and they were more engaged because they were more proactive and they were more involved in their health, right? So the next thing that they really highlighted, and this is something that I really, you and I have a decent enough understanding about tech and some of the problems that a lot of these big carriers deal with. They've developed their full internal system, and obviously Todd Todd says that his brother Ed is the best engineer, coder there is, and they have another guy there named I know his name, but I don't know if we're we don't want to I don't want to have people headhunt this guy, but super genius developers and coders, and they built the system that they call Oronoko, and Oronoko it's a river in South America, right? I think it is. It's a river. Oh. I first thought it was a Japanese city or something like that, but I think it's a river in South America.
So someone will research it and drop it in the comments.
Yeah,
like, you idiots. You
Oronoko. But I think it's all the estuaries and flowing into this river, and that's kind of the philosophy of this data system. So they have a farm-to-table, ground-built data system and tech platform that everybody uses, everybody interfaces, and it handles everything from enrollments to claims data to agent experience to book of business to commissions, and everything flows into one.
Even like who's the broker of record attached to the member, everything in one place.
And everything is a source of truth in this.
And imagine this for you agents listening, even the outside vendors. So when it comes to like dental and transportation and vision providers, it's like, you have to go to that separate URL or that separate link, or let me transfer you to that other department. Oh, your member's having a dental issue. Yeah, we can't help with that. We gotta transfer you somewhere else. All of their vendors, all that information is also loaded into that one platform, that one ecosystem.
Correct. And so I think if you ask, Ed and Todd Park, what is their differentiator? It's obviously their culture and their philosophy of the company, but it's this system that they've built that they're insistent that nobody else can build, because I don't think anybody else can build it because nobody else has, including our government. So they have this really sophisticated all-in system. And the reason why it's important, so when I talk to agents about why Devoted, and you start going, well, let me tell you about their tech. it sounds like a really weird, stupid value proposition to care about. But when you guys have experience in the industry, you agents, and you work with some of these other carriers, and they're these behemoths that have been around for, some of them have been around 100 years, and they have multiple systems and ways of doing things and processes, and they've had a bunch of different acquisitions and databases and tech stacks and operational.
Or a different stack for this line of business. We have this stack for commercial, and we
Correct.
have this one for individual, and we have this one for Medicare.
Yeah, and they have their SaaS that tracks all their other SaaSes, and like all their, and you call in to get help, and a customer service agent has to access 50 different pools or transfer you over to a different department because they don't have the access and the information in front of them to help. And what these guys have done is industry changing, and it is very unique. And I think it is one of the reasons why it allows them, one of the words that I liked that they kept using was hyperscalability, hyperscale. And they think of things like a tech company, like one of these Silicon Valley tech companies, and they have that ability to, as they get more members and enroll, their infrastructure, their technological infrastructure is built to be able to handle that. And it has the whole customer journey from the time they enroll to what happens, every transaction that happens, every piece of mail that gets sent out, all the omni-channel communication, and every resource or every department that needs to access that can have access to it in one.
Wasn't it like there was one thing though too that I'll bring up that, like, for those of you who are listening, they're like tech nerds, like the API calls was crazy.
3 billion API calls a day, right? It was like,
was it a month or a day?
No, it was a day.
It was crazy.
It was so basically what that means is the data transfer is updating all the time, continuously, like multiple times.
So every single interaction, like if a customer calls in and they take a note, it's updating. If they send like a mail piece to your member, it's in that system. If anything happens, if there's claims, anything to do with any member that's transpiring at any moment in time is just continuously refreshing in the system.
So I think about it like that,
cool.
That Oronoko, that river, and all these data streams and estuaries like flowing into one massive, data river where you can access those things. That's how it functions. And like Dan said, there's, I think it was 3 billion API calls per day. And then they have 40 different micro updates to the system every day that get pushed out live. Like they don't do a big update, once every month or quarter or anything like that. Yeah. It's continually being improved and worked on all throughout the day. And, as we've tried to become more sophisticated and leading edge in our industry with the tech and the reporting, we've had to learn enough as operators to just kind of be, know enough to know what we don't know and be
Correct.
Dangerous. And so it was very impressive from that standpoint because we understand how complicated of a solution that they are undertaking and they've built.
Right.
There was a lot of other interesting conversations that I don't really want to.
The last thing I will just touch on with that, like stop, so to speak, and was about like the SMS and text messaging too, which is also a piece that even within that ecosystem, they're able to text out to their members and also text to brokers, and they have done a great job at capturing TCPA opt-ins from all their members and brokers. And you'll notice that as like a means of communication, because we'll talk about the text messaging, like part of the member experiencing too. But candidly, when they asked me and said, "Hey, are you surprised that over 20-something% of our members have texted us this year?" I'm like, "No, because it was
49%
of
their members. So almost already we're not even halfway through the year.
Yep.
And already almost 50% of their members have text interaction.
Correct.
With Devoted.
Yeah, and that's what's great because I'm like, no, I'm not surprised at all because we deal with the same beneficiaries and we've been texting and doing that on the front edge for years with what we do. And that's, for a lot of people, their preferred methodology of communication. And we act, and it's annoying that we treat seniors like they're these incompetent idiots that can't figure out technology, when the reality is the people who are getting onto Medicare have been in a working corporate environment
for 30 years now.
Yeah, and they buy and sell and shop just like we do. So of course, like, they're going to want a text message. It's just that they're more in front of it, you know?
Yeah, I thought there were some interesting statistics that said that 92% of their beneficiaries had a mobile phone on record. So obviously,
and I tip my hat to them on that, because same thing. They're just like looking ahead. They're just in front of what other carriers should have already been doing. And I will say that, like, again, kudos, because they're already doing it. And again,
everybody else is trying to enrich data and do opt-ins and get PTC and all that stuff.
And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, like, look, we all know how painful like the customer service process is. If I think to myself about having to pick up the phone to call a 1-800 number, to talk to a member services representative, to wait on hold and get transferred around, it is probably the last thing on planet Earth that I want to do. And that's the thing, is same thing with all these beneficiaries. They would rather just pick up their phone and send a text to the devoted whatever and be watching their, Jeopardy or whatever they're doing on TV, and, be able to get a response via text. You know what I mean?
Yep. So that was another thing where I think they're kind of leading the pack, is the tech and the outreach to their consumers and things like that. So I'm trying to think what else. Oh, then they had their agent support team, which for agent call resolution, they called, I don't know if she had the joke. She said they're like the A team, like the old A team. And what was the guy's name that had the cigar? I can't remember.
I don't know.
Harley. Someone older than me. I watched a little bit of A-Team when I was a little kid in the 80s.
I know.
But
I can only think of I Pity the Fool. That was the only thing I could think of. But
Hudson or H.
Oh,
starts with an H.
It's something about, what does he say, though?
I love it when a plan comes together.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was their slogan, is I love it when a plan comes together, of the agent journey. They showed us, what you can access with commissions and downloading your book of business for agents and agencies. Again, very, very clean, very nice, very sophisticated, feels like a very well-oiled tech
And by the way, we love it as an FMO, to be able to actually do the business we're supposed to do, where they're providing us with like real-time RTS reports. And, like when we're looking ahead right now at AHIP and certifications, and we get to that time of year and look at hundreds or thousands of agents with a carrier, and looking at the roster and go, who's ready to sell and who's not, and being able to take that data and do something with it and contact those brokers. They make it very easy.
Spoiler alert, Devoted is the best at that, as far as their reporting for agents, sales reporting, activated agents, trends. Their report is the most consistent, the easiest to access, and it's the most user-friendly, in my opinion.
It's pretty easy.
So, yeah, they talked about the agent experience. I did ask the question. I don't know if it came up in your breakout, but they are going to be sunsetting their agent incentive with the merch and the swag and stuff like that.
It's because of the CMS
thing.
That's extra compensation.
Not one extra penny after this can be spent on those things. So they had to sunset that, which...
What do they call it? It's not like broker bucks. What do they call it?
Devoted bucks.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking like elementary school, where I got like fake dollar bills.
Caught being good.
Yeah. It's like
where
that.
you get to spend your money at the teacher's store.
That's
highlights
exactly
of your life when you're a kid.
Oh, man, that was awesome.
Yes, they are. I think they're. I don't know if this is our news to share, but they're sunsetting that end of September. So spend your broker bucks.
Spend them if you got them.
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody that's following the industry would know that those would have to be eliminated. So they are going to go to a you can purchase it model, but that's a little bit disappointing, because I know Devoted had good quality stuff, and we have a lot of our agents here and in the building and around the town that have really liked that stuff, the quality merch, and they're proud to wear it. And it's good quality stuff. It's not like the cheapest garbage
Gildan shirt.
Yeah, Gildan their worst sport tech. It's good quality stuff that the agents have been proud to represent. So that's going to be going away, but they've got great marketing stuff there, all on their platform. And then what else was
they talked about there? So the other thing just to keep in mind too is their marketing, like their toolkit. They have a thing that they do call toolkit, and then storefront. Mm-hmm. And that's the other thing that I really like. If you look, I can appreciate from a marketing perspective, like a really good clean UX UI. They do a really good job of like their website and like their storefront. I would also say, like, for brokers who aren't familiar, like you're used to like United Healthcare sales toolkit, or Humana. Like I like through Ignite some of their access to pieces that they have. But I will say that Their pieces are great. They've been thoughtful about it. I like how it's pretty clean and just their branding in general.
Less is more. Yep.
Yep, exactly. It's a very cohesive branding, and that they have a lot of pieces available. So if you're a broker who's used to selling, United products or others, and you actually download those pieces in PDFs, they have a lot of that available, which again, for a lot of carriers their size that are like regional or smaller carriers, they typically don't have that technology, which Devoted has that for social media posts, for PDFs, for all the kind of marketing that you'll actually need. So,
yeah, I'm trying to think, what are the other stops they had?
It was the rollout, the expansion, the markets, and we'll I don't know, and to be completely honest, because you never know. I mean, I know people at CMS listen to our podcast and stuff as well. We'll probably have to put a disclaimer on this particular episode about, the information is intended only for like broker use, and, the disclaimer not for
just consumers. In case, let's not talk about, if you want to know what states they're expanding into, hit us up.
Right.
But let's not say that specifically.
Exactly, because we are just definitely, we mind our P's and Q's, and we know there's regs and guidelines about that, but they are having a big expansion. For sure, they actually gave us the slide deck, which we can send out to any of you if you want. Hit us up, DM us, or in comments, we'll get in touch with you, and we can send you kind of the areas in which they're expanding. And same thing I would tell everybody. And really, like, our audience for this podcast is brokers in the insurance community. It's really not for consumers. That's not the intent of this podcast. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the final thing that of the tours and things like that, they went into state expansions. I thought their states that they're expanding into were very interesting. There's going to be a lot of disruption in the states where they're already at and where they're going to. So there's going to be opportunity for agents and brokers to place business with Devoted.
Yeah, and the other thing I will say is they've recognized too, and I understand their strategy and slowly how they've been able to build it and grow it, but they're going to have more product types too, which will be really a big add for a lot of you brokers who recognize where a lot of these carriers have had these very unique portfolios of products. And going back to previous episodes of the podcast, you're going to have a whole lot more HICNs or PVPs. You're going to have a whole lot more plan types. Expect a whole lot more this coming year.
HICNs are Hickens, the health insurance contract number.
Yeah, with CMS.
That's the per county, per plan filed benefit. In other words, different variations of the plan. One thing that I thought was interesting there is we'll talk about the bid process here in a second, because that's kind of what we'll talk about what we asked them and wrapped with. But one thing I'll ask guys is, we don't ask a lot on this podcast, but if you are out there and you see that Devoted's coming to your state, or you want to get contract with Devoted, you don't have them yet,
hit us up.
Hit us up. We would love to work with you on that, even if it's just one contract. We have a great relationship with them. We would love to guide you on that. And, we don't ask for anything for putting out this podcast, really. I feel like ever, but we would like your, Devoted contract if you're looking to place it with someone.
Yeah. And did we want to, before we wrap completely, do we want to talk about like TBC and like how we actually, and going through, how some plans can't degrade enough because of TBC, and, why we can't like talk about dollars and cents. So
let's transition it to the last two pieces that we talked about. We did, for all of you agencies and FMOs out there, we did ask them very specifically about agency FMO compensation. And we're going to do a whole other episode all on what the hell is going on in the industry in depth right now. But we did talk to them about that. And then one thing that they said, why they can't share their summary of benefits or what their first looks is, because that's usually what you get, or a preview of plans to come. But there's something called NABA. And this is really digging into the weeds, guys. So this is the national average bid amount.
Yep.
And what happens is when the carriers go to file their bids, and they were due, June 2nd?
Yeah, June 2nd or June 3rd.
June 2nd or June 3rd, and the plans have to.
So there's like a website that all the carriers have to go on to from CMS, and they have to actually load in their bids, and it's due like by midnight. You have to file. There's been circumstances over the years where a carrier has completely pooped the bed, so to speak, and not filed correctly. But yeah, they have to get them in by like midnight. So anyways, that's when they submit those bids, and then you go through like desk review. And that period of time usually goes through about mid-August. Anyways. So.
Yeah, well, there's usually a margin of error on there where essentially plans have to kind of guess what that average bid amount is going to be. And then usually plans are off by about $1 or $2.
Yeah.
And then they have to kind of go back and so either they're going to
get per member per month is what he's talking about.
PM. So either they're going to get more money later on, or they're going to have to come up with a little bit of money. And they're saying that the way the funding environment is with this year in the bid amount, this is why all the carriers are struggling right now, is it's so volatile that they're thinking some of these carriers are going to miss by $20 or $30 or $10 to $20.
Well, no, up to $26.
Yeah. So
per member per month. So it used to be maybe there was about $2 per member per month, and now this year $26 per member per month, which is just massive, 10 times more than they're used to with that uncertainty.
So, and usually they'll file their bid amounts, and once the plans get approved, they get pre-funded about 75% of the funding that they're going to need for the plan. Correct? Is that the way you understand? Correct us if we're wrong, but that's roughly how it goes. So anyway, there's just a lot of potential uncertainty. So plans can't really lock in benefits and go to market and say, this is what our plan's going to look like. Here's our summary of benefits, because there's so much ambiguity right now with the dollars and the amount that it's moving right now, that if a carrier really did that right now, they could potentially have catastrophic consequences. So
other carriers can very much adjust their benefits.
Correct. So again, we're going to see, first looks later than we've ever seen.
So plan, just if you're listening and you're used to getting first looks and getting all those benefits, I would not be shocked if you think about ACA and you think about window shopping and how you just don't even know what the ACA plans are going to look like. That's usually, those last couple days right before open enrollment, when you find out what are the actual premium amounts, like what is the plan. It's going to feel a little bit like that this year, because this year's already so much of a shit show anyway. But I mean, I don't think we're going to get really what that looks like until August.
AEP this year is going to be like a greased pig race or something like that, where nobody knows, like no one can prepare, and then they just let the greased pig out and everyone will go chase it.
That's true.
It's going to be wild.
It's going to be slippery to go catch that business.
Yeah.
Right?
So we ended up, and we'll kick this over to the next podcast, but then we asked their chief legal counsel, Mo Cowan, who's genius, really smart guy, kind of about Chevron deference and litigation that's going on there, and some of the other lawsuits that have been filed against CMS. So we're going to kick that over to another episode and speak to those things in depth. But just kind of to wrap, guys, Dan and I really appreciate a carrier like Devoted. A lot of these new up-and-comers, are kind of flash in a pan, and it takes a couple of years for them to gain the trust. I would say I'm willing to put my stamp of approval on them, as far as like, if you're a broker out there, they're a carrier that I'm wanting to grow with. They're a carrier that I want to place business with. One final piece that we kind of hinted at, or that we didn't really talk about, was once their members have been on a plan, 65% of them refer somebody else to Devoted. So that's a pretty wild statistic, that the more Devoted you sell, it's going to self-perpetuate growth, book of business.
And the last thing I would just add to that too, because we do track this, like we look at our accretion rate, which is, the apps that you actually submit, like which ones actually go into effect or don't. We look at our rapid disenrollment rate, which is the first 90 days, right? And then we look at our business that carries through beyond 12 months. And with Devoted, it was higher than pretty much any other carrier. Yep. So just know that it's incredibly, incredibly high. So we've been really happy with the business we have placed with Devoted thus far. So again, we really do value and appreciate all the carriers, especially the ones out there right now who are continuing to deliver the message that they're committed to our FMO partnership that recognize the value and, what we do in the supply chain cycle, so to speak, in the agent community. We really appreciate all of our carrier partners, but definitely just want to do an episode while it was fresh in our minds, and kind of give you more of an update on how the rollout went with Devoted.
Definitely give Devoted their flowers for what they're doing. I think we're both hot on them. And the final thing I'll say is just their culture and personality as a company is really unique and really refreshing. All of our insurance carrier partners, we love all of you, but they're all like a different personality, right? They all have like the different flavor. We know who the fun team is. We know who's very uptight-ish, kind of sterile.
Who I got to walk into the building on eggshells.
Yeah, and then it's like your family members or friends. Each one has a different personality, and but Devoted definitely has a very clearly defined culture that permeates through all their team members.
Yep. All right, man. So drop us some comments if you have questions. Feel free. You can contact us. Same thing. We'd be happy to answer any questions about Devoted. And like always, since we forgot to like or subscribe, if you like the content. So
appreciate you guys.
Agent Boost.